To some, power is everything. To stand out above everyone else, and to be seen as a true winner. Power, fame, money, all of it is what should be strived for. This line of thinking easily passes for most dragons. They view themselves as above everything else. But one breed of lesser dragon loves little more than to cooperate with others. And that is the Dragonelle. See, the Dragonelles are actually a very remarkably rare case when it comes to the like of other dragons, because most dragons would rather die than be seen as a mount by most things, but Dragonelles are ridden by humanoids commonly, to the point where there are probably more serving as mounts today than in the wild. Well, don't get me wrong, it's not like there are none in the wild, it's probably closer to a 60-40 type situation, but this is still remarkable when compared to everything else. It's also very common for people that claim they ride a true dragon to in reality just ride a Dragonelle. See, when it comes to their standing, they are pretty much on par to wyverns. They are undeniably related to dragons, but are much weaker, hence the term lesser dragons. And if I had to guess of their true origins, the Dragonelle are probably distant cousins to the metallic dragons. Despite their appearance being much closer to the chromatics, their behaviour is very much more like the metallics. That's not to say that the wild ones are safe and friendly to be around by any means, no, it's more likely that they are just to leave you alone. They're not going to attack you outright unless they are truly desperate. See, Dragonelles, unlike most dragons, are actually purely carnivores, and live to hunt quite commonly. They rarely go out to hunt humanoids, however, not because of their moral reasons, but because, well, if they're likely to kill a human, many others are going to take revenge on them. They realise that humans are so communal in that regard, and so it's not worth the one-time meal. Another thing that sets them apart from other dragons is just how social they are. They travel and live in large numbers, which is almost always led by one male and their group of female partners. This makes them akin to lions in the wild, with a pride that has one male ruling over it. It's also a lot less common for males to just be born to begin with. Male Dragonelles are so much larger and stronger than the rest of their kind, but the females are the ones that do all the hunting and work, making the males even more valuable, again, much like lions. They cannot speak, however. Their intelligence is on par to wyverns, and like most animals, they use base sounds and roars to communicate. They can very much understand language, and can make different noises to communicate back, sort of like a really intelligent dog telling you what it needs. Their physical form is more akin to true dragons as well. While their size is about on par to that of a wyvern, they have the usual 4 legs and pair of wings. Most have 1 pair of horns, and some fins that go along the sides of their faces, and bizarrely enough, they have an arrow-like pointed tail that is straight out of the most early artworks of dragons. But their bodies are much longer proportionately, making them a lot easier to serve as mounts, and I should get into how important that is for them. See, most Dragonelles are indeed mounts, but they still have their sort of social structures. It's why most breeders tend to keep the males for themselves and only give out the females, since it's much harder to replace them. And while I'm sure a king's royal guard, for example, might try to get their hands on some males as mounts, replacing them is going to be expensive. It's not exactly something you can do on the regular, even when you have an entire kingdom's coffers. They eat a lot too. Keeping them fully fed is going to require several large livestock every single day. Depending on the size of the dragon, this can get worse too. This is one of the main things that keeps them as elite mounts. Getting your hands on one isn't actually the hard part, it's keeping them fed and healthy. That's the one that drains your coffers. And like wyverns, they can look vastly different depending on the region they are from, usually taking on the patterns and colours that are roughly distinct from that area. It helps breeders and traders in livestock immensely too, since many traits are and are not desirable, and of course lots of nobles love having their pick and colour of a dragon. Money does give you vanity after all. Oh, and speaking of wealth, Dragonelles do not care for it at all. Unlike most dragons, they don't hoard treasure or care for riches. They don't even do what wyverns do and keep shiny things that they happen to find. They just have no interest in it entirely. It's probably one of the biggest differences that sets them apart. This, combined with their more social nature, is probably why dragons actually hate them. See, while some dragons actually like wyverns, viewing them as cute and maybe even sometimes akin to pets, they cannot say the same for Dragonelles. They might even go so far as to hunt and kill the wild ones, to near genocidal effect. Even the more aggressive metallics can sometimes do this. They view Dragonelles in many ways as degrading. The idea of dragons that serve other beings is insulting, even to the likes of the good-hearted ones. This might actually be one of the main reasons that Dragonelles are found in the lower altitudes, almost flatlands when compared to other dragons. The plains and hilly farmlands are where you are more likely to find a group or a clade of Dragonelles. This is also where most people can be found, and again it makes our connection so much stronger to them. I'd actually like to get into that connection a little bit more. See, despite how many will see it, it is far from a master-servant relationship. Dragonelles bond with their rider, and often refuse to be ridden by anyone they dislike. They can have a few exceptions for times of desperation, for example, or if their rider has someone else as transport. But they are very loyal to the one that they have bonded with. A rider can of course have other mounts, and the Dragonelle might be okay with it, but they would never want another rider. This bond is almost unspeakable too. It's almost as if they would want to tell you about it, but can't really find the words to do so, as if the two beings are almost now one in a way. It's one of the reasons that gaining one as a mount is not as simple as buying it from a breeder, despite what they are going to tell you. This is almost a cultural thing to some places as well, as a lot of the more tribal and outcasted areas have Dragonelles more commonly, and sometimes they try to bond a hatchling with a child. This usually works. Of course, the image of a noble knight upon their own dragon mount does come to mind. It is far more likely for it to be a Dragonelle for this reason. They are just so much more reliable than two dragons, and much easier to acquire as well. This makes it wholly worth it, despite the fact that they are so much weaker than true dragons. In fact, I'm not even sure I would say Dragonelles are a match for wyverns, since their venom gives them a leg up above anything else. Of course, the rider is going to make up for that difference. However, Dragonelles in the wild have something that mean they will topple almost every other dragon. The wild ones indeed use their numbers more so than any other type of dragon. While yes, a red dragon could easily scorch a lone Dragonelle in moments, I doubt they could take on 7 so easily, or even 20. These are the few occasions that the males will actually fight back, of course, when their territory as a whole is under threat. Bizarrely, this is actually one of the few occasions that might cause chromatic dragons to team up. A green and a black dragon rival that have contested territory, for example, might team up in order to do some pest control as they would see it. Of course, they would immediately go back to fighting each other, but it's still worth pointing out. The tale I have of a Dragonelle is one of my youth, and it's one that actually hates me. See, when I was younger, way before I was out exploring, I was a young nobleman, barely out of my teen years. My family had many knights under to protect our house, and one was assigned to protect me, the young lady Ivina, who had a Dragonelle bonded with her called Nestle. She protected me as best she could, and I have to say she has done an amazing job. One time, when we were attacked by bandits, and without her help, I dread to think what would have happened to me as a young man. But the thing that always annoyed me is that her Dragonelle hated me with passion, and I can't exactly seem to think of why. Anytime I went out with the help of Ivina, the Dragonelle would scoff at me, sometimes breathe heavily upon me disapprovingly. One time he even knocked me over when he flapped his wings so hard. Another time, when she was helping me travel to a nearby town, he shook me off of him, forcing Ivina to come and save me. Annoyingly, that seemed to make it more mad at me for some reason. If I had to theorize, perhaps it thinks I'm somehow a threat to Ivina, and it just wants to protect her from me. Which is weird, because she's meant to serve me in that regard, but I don't know how the dragon thinks. The thing is it's quite beyond me of how it viewed me this way in the first place, as I've always thought me and Ivana got on quite well, wonderfully in fact. Out of all the people that work for my family, she's the one I actually quite like. I come visit her commonly still whenever I'm in my family's lands, and Nestle still does not seem to like me. What makes it even weirder is that now that I ride a true dragon of my own, Nestle loves him and thinks he's the coolest thing ever. It's just me the Dragonelle has a problem with, bizarrely enough. I guess there's just no helping some people. Or dragons, in this case. Thank you for listening to my tales. I am the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me. But, till next we meet, fellow traveller, have a good day.